Okay, well, I never realized how hard it should be to record uh, in a video, record a video in a country that has these five announces a day in your waking time, and like these prayers that come from the stereos and encapsulates all of the place. And then there is this dog that is barking in line with the prayers, because I think the dog is thinking that there is some kind of like a creature that is like present somewhere that is making that sound. I don't know. That made me thinking though, because I'm waiting for like 5 minutes now on in front of the camera, and I'm rumbling right now. And um, when I started this video, I had two things in mind. First one was to say to you all that this is kind of like an experiment, because I will be talking about contaminated places, and this is not is like a contaminated as like a health related issue, but contaminated as with meanings. So since YouTube is kind of like a virtual place, I want to know if whatever I say in front of this, will this come out as like a cliche? Because sometimes I feel like when I'm watching a YouTube video, even though some things are like really novel, when people are talking, because I'm listening it from a YouTube channel especially, it feels cliche or stereotyped, or feels like more low-key and smooth and soft, and maybe some kind of like a procrastination, because that place is contaminated by my previous actions, as well as the massive use of this platform. Anyway, I wanted to talk about like intrinsic possibilities of us. Maybe I should start with talking about my case, like new case. Like so now it's kind of like in holiday season, grass, and because the holiday season, I'm visiting my parents, and there is this sort of like this dynamic that is like established previously, but also the things that happen in my own life away from them also makes me change. And I feel like there are some radical changes, especially that is going on recently, but always. I just realized recently that they are radical actually. So with these hopes of maybe these hopes that I have related to maybe these changes will somehow I don't know, affect this established dynamics with my parents in a different way, so that I may be more energetic here too. I may be more talkative, I may be more open, because I am more talkative and open in my life, and there's this more energy that I have in me that I realize, and maybe that will like manifest itself. But I come here, and this since being having more energy and being more open to things, it's kind of like an intention. Although you may not be conscious that you have this intention all the time, you have this intention and you have to work towards it. You do work towards it without realizing it or not. But here, I lack this intention, and I can't find any roots towards this intention. Like I don't remember how did I acquire this like being more involved in things kind of like mentality in the first place. Because here I become lazy, and I become like kind of half awake. I have this consciousness of being here, but I'm also like detached and in my mind, and I feel like a high schooler, because this is kind of like this retrospective space that I was in most of the time in high school. And I feel like this kind of like this progress that I have in mind is not a progress about me, but about these places that I have put myself in, as if these places have certain attitudes that is like marked upon them. And when I enter, if I am like ready to embark on these marks on me, as well as if like having a tattoo or something, if my body is like in a proper place, I am able to have these marks on me as well. So in that place, I behave in one way, and when I come to another place it is contaminated again. I have these memories of how I behaved previously, and I have seen these people that are still behaving kind of like in their old way. It becomes hard. So that kind of makes me thinking like, so these things as behaviors I tend to own as mine. I think that there is this self that is myself, that I can behave in pattern A, and I can behave related to pattern B, etc. And I should be able to move between them. But why am I not able to do that so easily? Or even if I know that in the horizon it's there, I don't have the motivation to do so. I'm not motivated, or I don't have this intention to do so. But this intention I also kind of observe that is coming from outside as well, because in no time in which in my university life that I have come to a place and be like, this is the intention that I am forcefully creating. No, I'm always willing to be more inclusive, be more open, but it's not. It does not have this definite movement of me and now I'm forcing this. It just happens more naturally if it succeeds in the end. Okay, so that kind of makes me think like, how some things are symbolic. I'm wearing my old clothes, and I have this symbolic meaning for me that I used to wear them when I was insecure, for example, and that reminds me of these times. But this cloth itself, I mean, if I'm able to overcome these symbols that I have associated it with in the previous times, this cloth itself should not have this intrinsically, right? Because it's just a cloth, it's a material, it's a piece of textile. But then if it's that extrinsic, it should be a weak bound. But it's not a weak bound, because me as like a self-mover of things, of moving things, I'm not able to make that cloth move in the direction that I want it to move in a symbolic space. So it cannot be an extrinsic connection, because then I would, as an extrinsic connection with the cloth as well, we should be able to shift it, but I cannot. So I'm thinking that maybe it's not symbolic, and I also exclude metaphorical. It's a metaphor, like association sort of things in my mind, because of the same reason that if it's an association, if it's metaphor, it means that it is not included in the definition of that thing. Of course, it is not included in the vocabulary of clothes. It's not in the dictionary, but it is still more solid than an extrinsic property of that cloth, because I'm an extrinsically connected thing to that cloth, and I'm not able to change it. How come? So, and if I say it's metaphorical, it means that it's not real, but in my world it is real. And I say that it's a cloth, and we establish that its function is cloth. So I also establish its function as a piece of fabric that makes me feel bad in it when I wear it, because clothes, I think, I don't know, anything that we use as materials also come with this kind of approach that we have, like this intention, and that intention is not neutral. We like some things and we don't like some things, and I, especially in, like, I don't know, things that I wear on top of me, I like them or I don't like them, or I feel comfortable or I feel secure or insecure in them. I don't know. So then I start thinking that maybe, as if this cloth is, or if this place is like allocating some space to itself, like have this space. Maybe this cloth also has some kind of like a possibility space with it. It allows me certain moods, it allows me certain behaviors and certain attitudes and manners, while it excludes from me some other things as well. So as in like space that I have in my family, this house, or like the dynamic that also comes with its own space. So because and some parts of myself are living in that spaces, because maybe these are things that I also embark on. Maybe I define myself through the things that I have encountered. So when I encounter different stuff, it's usually easier for me to encounter some part of myself as well than my past selves are waiting for me in these places, and when I come, I become them. At first, I should remind you that this thought process is not just one instance. Like every time I come back to a place that I revisit a place, and a time passes between those visits, I feel like there is this double consciousness. First of all, this double consciousness changes because what I think and what I realized that I was doing in my previous visit, and their connection is different. So, for example, the last time I have visited this place, I've become my high school self. I felt like I have become my high school self because I have wore the clothes of my high school self, and then got this weird realization and kind of became insecure and kind of isolated myself for like a week, so I didn't go outside, etc., because I didn't have any friends in my hometown. And I had this weird double consciousness because how I was in Istanbul when I came to this place was different, and now how I had been in Istanbul and I'm visiting now is different. So even though I still have this solid connection that I cannot overcome so easily, I still feel it. This relation that I have is different. So I'm not saying that everything is the same and I am visiting the same moment over and over again as if it's some kind of like a rom-com and I'm coming back to my own old self and I'm living the same day, etc. It's not like that. But I'm saying that there is just some solid things, some things that are more than just habits, because I am having these while everything else is changing. It's not a habit that is associated with certain times. Or, of course, it is associated with certain times, but it's more like my configuration of self. Anyway, so these thought processes have also changed. So when I came the last time here, I was thinking that I have this old stuff that I'm revisiting, but then it became a problem establishing to myself, how am I embodying this old self? Where was it living? Was it living in the corner? Was it waiting for me? What was it doing? Because then I see that it's a dead self. Like I'm not becoming that self. I am rather stepping into this probabilistic space, possibility space, that some things are more easy for me to do, some things are harder for me to do, as if in Gibson's affordances, some things are afforded to me, like I have this cup and it's afforded to me with a shape, a certain hold of it, etc., kind of a thing, but more abstract level. So now I'm not thinking that there is this past self, because that past self was embodied. It was not a thought process. So I have the selves in me, and my body is an important part here. But these affordances, the external part is coming literally from these materials. So these materials have themselves with certain moods and certain feelings, and some colors give us certain moods, and some used objects. I'm sorry for the sounds, but anyway, some used objects come with certain memories, because I remember my connection, and two friends come together again, my body and this cup, and I have some memories with this cup, and I can establish relationships with material objects too, such as like when you go to cinema, there is this certain concrete behavior set that you have, and it's not just because of you. It's a population goes there in order to behave in a certain way. So I feel like that kind of, in that sense, that places are contaminated, because I it's not an abstract thing. When you design a place, you kind of think of its function, and when you live in a place, you start shifting and modulating that place according to your mood too. If you leave out your trash, or if you put some certain objects, they are functional as well. They are not just symbolic. They have this intrinsic purpose. And I'm saying that it's intrinsic because if I say something is functional, like color serves a function, if I say this, since function is actually the definition that we give of objects in their... Oh fuck, come on, shut up. Okay, this is important. I'm sorry, there's this car that passed. It's because of that. Anyway, if I say that it's functional, not just symbolic, like if I say that color is not arbitrary, it's because when I say functional, the dictionary definition is coming from the functions. You know, what is a cup? Something that you drink from. That's a function. And similarly, these abstract spaces that we have are also functional, and they are marked with things that we think are arbitrary, but actually are serving some things, such as color, I don't know, a certain design. So these secondary qualities are actually kind of like allowing us certain mood spaces. If you're still following me, and if the dogs did not distract you, they certainly did distract me. Anyway, so I'm saying in general that these feelings and have some properties, and they are manifested materially. I'm sorry. So at first, it gave me some sort of like an ontological insecurity, because if there is some kind of like this past selves, and even if I embody them and they don't wait for me at some abstract space, but if they're allowed to me, if they're afforded to me through some materials, let me handle this paper as well. If they're allowed to me through some materials, then does that mean that I am not completely free to be whatever I want to be? And I think I'm starting to be okay with not being totally free, because even if I delude myself thinking that I have all the behaviors available to me, if I want to do something, I do it. First, I'm materially and physically constrained. Like, I have a constraint on my body, and I have a constraint on my physical space as well, all the time, and I have constraints on time, etc. So even though I want to do something, and if like I'm able to break free from this old chains that I have established, and I now realize that I don't want to anymore, I have still constraints, like in all ways. So I am now okay with also having constraints by this materiality. And I kind of related to this, to what existentialists say, you know, like existence precedes essence. And I think this kind of creates more ontological insecurity. I don't remember their arguments. I just think that this sentence essentially is relevant to what I'm saying here, because what exists? What exists is this physicality, and we're no pros at physicality. You know, we have problems with our bodies all the time, and we don't really know how they function, and we are really strangers to our own materiality that we carry everywhere anyway. So how can not we be strangers to ourselves, that is more like a mixture of whether you believe in essences with essence and soul and with body, it's a mixture. What we say self is actually something that is manifested, that is embarked, that is taken up. um, that depends on the situation. I mean, it can be a more concrete thing. It can concrete taking it up, but it can be more like abstract. You can be doing no manifest labor, but can still have this sort of retrospective stuff. But I would say that it also comes with a bodily shape. You know, some manners that you are able to think more clearly, some behaviors, some attitudes of your body that allows you certain thoughts, etc. I go that far, and I believe that it is actually there's some kind of like a direct correspondence. Anyways, that was like a long parenthesis. um, but it's important that I start conversing about body, because it's just not my exterior physical things. It's also my the side of happenings, you know, the side of becomings, my body. I think that I it's hard for me to change these patterns, especially because I also carry my body to them, you know. Like, even though this connection, this relationship with my body and this place A is maybe more appropriate to what I am living at that moment and what I am feeling like, but this relationship that I have between my body and my hometown is kind of like, it's kind of old. So even if my hometown changes, even if my friends change and my family changes and like their side changes, since I come with this body and it carries my memory as well, it's hard for me to change. Like, the relationship is hard for me to change because it is dependent on two variables. And these old selves are actually kind of coming from this relationship as well, because I have this constancy here, you know. Even if everything changes, I'm still reminded of the old things. And now I want to connect this with its contrary position. When change finds you. So I've talked about, and up until this moment, how it's really hard to change, how it's really, some things are solidified and you have habits and certain approachments towards certain people, and you remember, and it feels like it's repetitive. You are as if chained by the decisions that you have made, and like, you cannot change your fate, and fate is what you have established before, and it's all deterministic and you made it that way, etc. But first, you did not make all of it. You were not making explicit decisions all the way. And second, you have changed. Like, you have broken up some patterns, and some things change, and change is possible. I certainly believe that, and I have seen it in myself, and I have seen it throughout my school life. I was living with my parents, and I was changing all the time. I was changing in 2 months maybe. How was that possible? And why is it hard now? Well, I think there are different types of changes, and if you are here, I will say that feel free to interrupt me, because this part is a new question, because it took some time for me to establish what I understand by past selves, and I'm still working on it. So I haven't come into this part, at least in this theory, like how change is possible. I have another kind of like a thought pattern where I know or think that I know how change is possible, but at this time I'm not really sure in this thought pattern. Anyway, but some realizations that I have made, I will explain now. So, um, I I was talking about how I did that while I was in high school and middle school, that I have changed. And first, I will kind of connect it to the developmental things, and I will say that, well, because the personality or past selves are a retrospective thing, while you are establishing a pattern or establishing a relationship with a certain people, it is still in development. And I wanted to give a developmental account, so there is just uh, amount of time that is this open horizon time in which this relationship is still working on itself, is still being established, and in that time you're able to change. And that when you close it off, you say that I had this past self that I'm trying to get rid of, or I'm trying to reconnect with. So I'm, for example, this self that I am creating right now is still in its developmental progress. So I don't know what possibilities it bears, because I did not close that possibilities yet. So they are endless, so I don't see them. I don't see any established things. So for example, I realized that I do repeat some words too much, because these are the things that are most available. So I just have this pattern, but that pattern is all really connected to my immediate self right now. So it's not a definite thing yet. So I don't have a past self, for example, related to my YouTube persona or how I approach this. The second time I will have kind of like I will have some sort of feeling of how it will go and how I will talk. But this is the first time, so I'm also discovering some things. In that sense, there is a change, and change is relative to the person that I am that is not recording this video. And there will be a second type of change that will be related to the person that was recording the first video and now recording the second video, etc. So there is this inner change in self. There is this bubble of self, and there are different movements. The first video, second video, third video, or maybe now creating a podcast and stuff. This bubble of recording stuff, and there's this bubble of not recording stuff, and there is this change that is more visible, and there is this bubbly thing in itself. The change is not so visible, but definitely there. So when I'm changing bubbles, I can see the change more easily. So I cluster all the things that I had been doing as a self which was living with her parents, and that's a bubble. Now, if I go into that bubble, I see that it's not an homogeneous bubble, and I can find many different small bubbles. Like I can fracture it, because I was not consistent throughout these 18 years. So of course there are more than one bubble, but since I am its negation, I'm not living with my parents. I'm saying that this was a coherent self that I jump into when I come here and don't know how to change. Now in my immediate self, I have this bubble of me recording this video, and I have this bubble of me stopping in the next moment, and I say that, oh, I am changing like this. But now, I was not doing this whole hand movements a second ago, but I'm doing it now. So I can find a bubble here saying that this person is the person that is doing this hand movement, crazy hand movements while they record, because they want to emphasize something. And there was this moment that this cute person that's not doing anything and just looking at the camera and kind of like checking herself whether she's looking okay and if everything's okay, and etc. And also talking. Anyway, so you create your bubble, you create your own negation and say that this is your past self, and then when you jump into it, you see different bubbles. But what I'm trying to say here is actually it's easier to compare between bubbles, And when you are in one, you think that it's coherent, it's consistent, that you have a personality, that you know how she behaves, that you know how they behave. It's not so, because it's actually fractured as well. So yeah, that was my point actually. I don't know how to end this video and be getting longer and longer. Anyway, that was my point. My point was that I think the places are contaminated, the places are included in the bubble, and that's, I think, a crucial point too that I want to mention, because I think it was implicit in my thought pattern, but let's make it explicit as well. There is this bubble is actually a space, like it has colors and sounds and odors and movements and my manners and my clothes and other people, so it's intersubjective as well. Like the activities, that the things that is happening in that place. For example, I'm stepping here and I'm looking, or I'm like walking and running and it's hot there, so maybe I'm not walking at certain times. So there's this whole capacity, all capability of things, and me also like inhabiting that space and making it a self bubble for me, because I still have this perspective. So bubbles have all these qualities, whether you separate them, distinguish them, like primary, secondary qualities. I don't know, but the self is directly related to the external things, I think, and through them that we are able to understand ourselves, through my interaction with other things, materials and people, that I'm able to discover things in myself. So past selves, of course, some things are more easier to access if I'm more around the things that made me access myself in the first place. Anyway, this is my account of contaminated places, and I would initially like to connect it to another point that is kind of related to this one, but I'm not going to do it in this video because I think I won't be able to handle it, because I started rambling again. So I'm sorry about that if it's been a pain in the ass to listen to this. I'm sorry if the subject intrigued you, but you had to listen it through me to learn about it, because I think that was not that of a successful video in terms of me talking, because I think I repeated some things too much, but it's an amateur video and I just wanted to record it. And in my second video, I think if I don't get lazy, I will follow up on this one. And I want to say that, well, all this relationship and all this learning about myself and about other things, and these functional vocabularies and etc., and how color is included in this function, in this abstract sense, etc., are also things that we learn about and things that we remember, and kind of related to our intelligence, and are kind of related to our knowledge of exterior world, even if like this kind of ingrained in facts as well, in our personal facts. So I want to connect this initially to our own personal epistemology, but I won't do it in this video because conditions was not that great. I mean, this background is great, but the conditions are not that great, so I think I will stop it here. Yeah, bye.